Hey everybody, JJ here. We're back after a minute. I haven't posted up a YouTube video in a while. Hopefully you'll be seeing a steady stream of YouTube videos coming up soon from the BSF friends that I took part with a couple of friends of mine from Crushing the Meta. A link hopefully or an image will be showing with some of the awesome team members we took part with. Radiant says he forgot some of the matches entirely. So I guess I can give you guys a round by round basis of how this deck went. As you guys can see, I did end up playing Jewel Knights. The deck is kind of intuitive. It's kind of deck number 48 or 49, but I did take a topping deck list that happened in the US like a couple weeks back or a couple weeks ago. So the person who happens to be a pioneer of a version of this list that I like a whole lot, that I am playing a very interesting tech card in here, that they were the first person to come up with it, not me. I didn't. I just took it and I played a couple of matches with it and I was like, yes, that tech is very good. So you guys are hopefully going to see it in this profile as well and explain a little bit more about it. First things first, I'd like to thank every last one of my teammates, Sven and Robin, who took part with me in the team event. Without them, I got carried in the finals. I got carried hard in the finals. I think I lost almost every single lost to every single one of my opponents in the finals. So they went above and beyond by carrying the whole entire run of it. So I'm really proud of them. They made the whole experience like super chill. It's always super chill with playing with most of my teammates whenever I get time to play with them. So without further ado, I don't want to keep on gushing because I'll be all here all day. I also want to shout out Typo King for borrowing me this deck. One of the awesome members of my community borrowed me this deck, entrusted me with this deck as a means to be able to play in the tournament for V, because I'm not really the biggest endorser for V. I love all versions of Vanguard, love all the formats, but V is probably one of my least played in terms of like decks and stuff that I own for it. I tend to just traditionally play Overdress and Premium. Those are my most played formats and those are my ones that I have been enjoying the most for the last couple of years. But V still has a small space when it comes to a deck like Jewel Knights. So there we go. Alright, sick. First things first, let's go over the grade 0 choice. Standard starter, doesn't really matter which way you choose, but this is the one I chose. Or this is the one I ended up with. We played 4 copies of the Jewel Knight staples you're going to want to run. So 8 copies of your Jewel Knight staples. You don't want to play less. You don't want to play... These are the only ones we got, so you're going to want to have to run these. It's going to have to run all of these Jewel Knight copies here. So we're going to go over the cores and stuff, and then grade 3 searchers, and then attack options that we ran instead. Then ran grade 3 searchers. We're basically going to be like speedballing through this, because it's a V premium deck. There's not much innovation to be had in most of these decks. I will be putting a deck code if some of the cards you couldn't see during this deck profile to save you some time and trouble. So if you don't have to, you don't have to watch a video. You can go ahead and skip along. We do play one night of Alone because he always wants to be joined with somebody else. He does work well in tandem with Ashley because his skill allows him to go into Soul, which feeds into your soul blasting skills that you happen to do with Salome and Ashley a whole lot of. And he can choose a unit you control if you call a grade 2 or less unit out of your deck, or just a grade 2 unit. Yeah, if a grade 2 is placed on your deck outside of your hand, so it needs to be called from your deck or a drop or whatever, you can put us into Soul to give it the extra plus 15k. So if you happen to call over Ashley on the rear guard circle and you call one of your other grade 2s and this is on a board, you can give it a crit plus 15, and if it's on a force marker, that's an extra plus 25 plus crit for free. Kind of for free. It feeds into Soul, which is really nice. So this tech option has been really nice. I was able to resolve it a couple of times, and it forced out extra 15 to 20k shield for my opponent every single time that it went off. We'd probably play 2 of it if you could, but we are running one less grade 1, and there's a reason for that. So here we go. The other Jewel Knights you're obviously going to be running are these other 8 Jewel Knights. And then 3 copies of Leofold, because they get to search any other grade 2 Jewel Knights you'll be needing. One thing I want to make sure that you guys try to remember, calling Sybil out to your deck is also good, because she can filter really bad hands of like multiple grade 3s that you can't end up guarding with, or like a draw trigger, since we are running a decent amount more draw triggers than you normally would. You can filter out your draw trigger to make sure that you get to your Jewel Knight pieces you're going to need. And you have some really interesting combos that you can do with Sybil in your opponent's turn if they're playing something like Giraffa, which I happen to play a decent amount of Giraffa against for some odd reason. Some people brought Giraffa with them that day, and I played against a couple, and then they were very surprised Pikachu facing when I was resolving Sybil in their turn and not having a stunned board. Like, sure, they can search, but it can't really keep up with my recycle and multi-attacks. So that was kind of nice. Alright, and now on to the grade 3s. We are running the Ashley stuff and Salome. So your 8 Jewel Knights that you're going to be running as your grade 3s. Standard, very, very standard. The only different variation of the extra grade 1 that we're not running. So instead of this extra alone that we're running 1 MLB instead of it. This actually came in handy so many times. so much. It was insane. There are moments where you happen to draw Ashley, and it's kind of nice to write it, but it's also nice that if you have it on Vanguard and you happen to have drawn into the Ashley, even though you are denying 1 less attack, you are getting 2 force markers in it, so you're equaling towards the same amount of attacks with more shield power, in terms of power, like raw power itself, because then it's 20 extra power instead of 25 extra power instead. So with Ashley you get like 2 attackers and 1 force marker, but then with this you get 4 attacks including the Ashley, but each of them have upwards to about 30 to extra 40 power on top of it in all column. So giving you soul to feed into Salome, giving you soul to feed into Ashley. It's a really good card. Give it a try for yourself and see if you like it. So those are my tech options. You don't have to run these if you don't want to. You don't have to run LB if you don't want to. It does feel like it's kind of int, I know, but it's not int. It's a pretty good card. So give it a try. Give it a try. If you don't like it, that's okay. You can always stick it out. It's always interchangeable. You can always take out these Knight of Alones for something else, but I like these because these give you extra power on your attacks, especially if you're combining it with Ashley. If you don't see Salome's for the game, it does give you extra game against matchups that do have larger hand, and you can pressure it. And then for triggers, we are running, I didn't sort the triggers, but we're running 6 crit and 6 draws, which allows us to draw into our pieces, because one of the biggest issues with this deck, it does restand. You don't really discard cards in your hand, you call them and commit them to the board, but you also have to defend against your opponent's attacks, and having a larger hand for better selection allows you to do that. You could run 8 crit and 4 draw if you want to, but you'll notice how hard you burn through your hand. That you do need the extra draw power to be able to keep on pressuring your opponent per turn. So I do recommend it. So my matchups on the day, I played round 1. I think I played round 1 against Narukami. They had a very good aggressive start. I think they hit me with a crit on 1. They hit me with a crit on 1. But then I think my Vanguard was this. And I think I had like two copies of Sisyphus on a board. 2 copies of Sisyphus on the board. And I just kept on bashing their face. When I got a grade 2 or extra grade 2s, I would then ride into either Sybil or into the 10k grade 2, or into Leofall, CB1, get another one. These become 13k. So I have a Leofall Vanguard or Leofall Rearguard, plus my Vanguard, plus a Sisyphus, plus something else. So you're making sure you have to go aggressive. Round 2 was against Nightmare Dolls. Against Nightmare Dolls, the ideology of the deck is that you want to keep on pushing aggression, so we kept on pushing aggression as much as possible. I do see some people tend to go Force 1 or Force 2. I am a big proponent for Force 1, so I tend to fundamentally almost always go Force 1. There are moments you could go into Force 2, and who you want to give the Force marker to can differentiate between what decks you're playing against. If you're playing against an Axel deck, you could go Force 2 if you want to, or if you want to go Force 1, you could give the Force 1 to your Vanguard if you're happy to ride on Ashley. But I usually, if I go on to MLB, I give one Force marker to every lane. So if I ride into Salome, my Vanguard is 23, my rear guards are all hitting for 20 into 25. Even though it's 10k shield, that 10k accumulates to 25. If you hit trigger, that's 35, and then it's extra power and extra shield your opponent needs to take care of. So they have to pay attention to how they guard and how they attack. Let's see, round 3, I played against Grand Blue Night Rose. Same verse, same as the first. I crit them on 2 on my rush turn, my grade 2 turn. Your grade 2 turn is probably like one of the strongest I've ever played with a deck before. With any deck whatsoever. Leofall facilitates a whole lot of extra pieces that you need out of your deck and puts a whole lot of extra pressure on your opponent. So we ended up hitting a crit. They hit a heal, I think, but they still had to give out an extra plus 15k shield, so they had to end up overguarding. So when it came to our turn, they won 3 damage, so we were able to push more cards out of their hand. And they were able to do like a double Skull Dragon turn, but sadly enough, I was only at like 2 damage at a time due to my aggressive guarding. And since your other cards are not Jewel Knight named, you can kind of like toss them away for shield to keep your damage low while you're building up your resources while pushing pressure. And so he didn't like play any of the removal that any of the new Grand Blue cards have, because right now they have the new grade 2 that can actually retire rear guards from your opponent. He doesn't play that, or they didn't play that at least. So that's something I didn't have to worry about really. Yeah, I really enjoyed the deck. The deck was fun. If you ever want to have a deck that can allow you to play very aggressive, have fun, and dish out a whole bunch of attacks. And then for top 8, I played against a couple friends of mine from Belgium, which is Radiant Vanguard, and I also played against Dave as well. Dave, who happens to play in BR Rose and stuff like that, and tops a whole bunch of them. I played against his team of James and Rick, and we had some pretty fun matches against each other. Played against James. He had a small little deck issue. Thankfully that was resolved like within the tournament, and we played it out, even though that he couldn't play that game. We played it out and we had a really fun time. It's really fun playing against their team. And then we played against Radiant. I got completely clapped out by their Aquaforce player, and then in finals I played against the Aquaforce player again. It was a bit back and forth this time, but sadly enough I was stuck on Ashley. I didn't see Salome, or I did see Salome, but it was like way too late. I was stuck on Ashley for 2 turns, and you need to see Salome at least like 1 turn in between it then. So I couldn't push my restand turn. So I had to keep on pre-committed cards to the board and having to intercept and stuff, so I lost a lot of momentum. But thankfully he was able to skip. He ended up milling out all of his grade 4 Lambroses out of his deck. So he was also on the back foot, so both of us were kind of noodle fighting a little bit. But sadly enough, I think he had hit a crit on one of the in-between turns, so he pushed me on a from 3 to 5 really easily, so I had to end up overguarding a whole bunch of stuff and PGing the last one, so I couldn't Salome to secure an extra attacker, because I think he had like 15k shield extra, plus 2 PGs that he ended up driving into, plus a heal trigger, so he had enough to guard most of my multi-attacks. But I felt that if I had maybe 1 more Jewel Knight in my hand, maybe we could have clinched it, but it's a if. It's if and or maybe. So Robin, my teammate from Crushing the Meta, ended up pulling that win, that W for us. Fen also pulled out a W for us, so I'm very grateful for both of them for carrying my my dumbass. Pardon my French, as they say. And I had a bunch of fun. So if you guys ever have, if you guys got any questions at all about any of the other tournament information that I might have skipped, I felt the tournament ran pretty smoothly. I had so much fun in it. I think it was one of the most smoothly ran tournaments I've ever played in my life. I think Premium was kind of a bit of a whoopsie-doopsie because we had some bias going into the tournament. So they had to be one table minus one. So if you're placed in table 15, it's a one table less sort of thing. So you have to keep it that in mind. So you always had like missed seatings, and it was like one repair. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you to all my opponents that I played against. If I happen to miss any of you or did not mention any of you, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Lo siento. Désolé. Désolé, as they say. But thank you so much for being my opponent. Radiant Vanguard, thank you so much for your awesome team being my opponent. I'm going to be coming for your Aqua Force player again. Hopefully in the BCS. It's going to be a mono game this time. And be in my house. Playing that premium. Any merchandise that I brought at the event? Did I buy anything? Not really. My friend of mine actually I finally got a card I've been hunting for years, actually. Which is Fairfield, so I can finally do my Pale Moon deck profile. My Silverthorn deck profile, I can finally update it, so hey, we got something on. I've warned him. Good, thank you. He's clapped to me, this cannot stand. Excellent, yes. So hopefully that's going to be a deck profile I'll be able to do soon, so... That's going to be fun. That's going to be super, super fun. So thank you all. Thank you all for tuning in and stopping on by. If there's anything else I've missed, be sure to put that in the comments below. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe, like, follow Radiant Vanguard on their Twitter, socials, follow Crushing the Meta on their Twitter and socials and YouTube channel and all that stuff as well. So be awesome, stay awesome, have a wonderful day. Thank you all for tuning in and stopping on by. Until later. Thanks and peace.
In other words, I love you. In other words.